Hello there, and welcome to this webinar on the Enterprise Trainer Skill Set. Ultimately, the purpose of this webinar is to help you get through your assessment workbook and to have as much, background knowledge and perspective on how to answer the questions as you go through the short answer questions, okay? And if we have time in this webinar, we'll go through the presentation topics as well. If we don't, then we will do that as a separate webinar, okay? So strap in, get ready for a great ride. Make sure you got your pad and pen handy, and we will get this show underway. So this booklet, if you go ahead and fill out the front cover, we've got your learner name, so put that in. Put in your email address and put in training venue, so that could be wherever you're undergoing the workshop, or if you're doing this via distance, then you can put in the name of your workplace. Okay, trainer name, pop that in. If you're not sure yet, just leave that blank. All right, date of course commenced. Ideally, put in the date that you enrolled in the course. Okay. So we're going to come through, and this information is just for your understanding and awareness, and that's all good. All right, so it's just the admin stuff on how you will be assessed. Okay, so coming through. All right. Okay, now this section, don't forget to put in your name and sign it and put the date. Okay, and the rest of this you can leave blank. Okay. Put in your learner name, put in the date, and finish date you can leave that blank, and the rest of it you can leave this blank. Okay, put in your learner name and start date, and the rest you can leave blank, as I said. All right, so we're going to come down. Okay, now we've got some short answer questions, and as part of it, you can certainly access the textbook, and you can do that via RAM Training website, or you'll be able to do it via the textbook that is given to you in class, or an electronic copy that is emailed out to you. Okay. However, having said that, there are a lot of questions in here that we'll be able to handle via going to Google. Okay, so if we take a look at the first question, for example, what elements form part of the learning program documentation? So as we go through these questions, I'm going to give you some strong hints. I'm going to tell you what could be some good things to look up on Google, and I'm going to do my best to, give you the insights and understandings that you would need in order to tackle the question and just get it done. So what elements form part of the learning program documentation? Okay, so essentially it's asking you what kind of things would you include in learning documents and delivery plans. So probably you'd include things like the venue, the students, a description of the students, their LLN levels, their motivation levels, why they're undertaking the course, the units of competency, the resources required, okay? All those different things. So we want you to definitely put in a good quality 2 or 3 sentences in here and describe what would make up a good learning program, okay? Question 2, in the learning environment, what information and documentation can be used to identify the needs of your learners, okay? So quite simply, we'd probably think about resumes, we think about position descriptions, we think about what else have we got? Enrollment forms, we've got maybe pre-course surveys that people have filled out, we've got reports from supervisors and managers, those kind of things, okay? Question 3, list 3 environments in which you may face constraints to your session delivery, okay? Now this could be anything at all right? So don't get too fixated on just one type of constraint. This could be environmental. This could be climate, okay, i.e. the weather. This could be what else? Limited resources. It could be the language literacy and numeracy levels of students. It could be reluctant learners. It could be what else have we got? Distance to travel for students, okay, and so the location, all those different kinds of things, okay. So, coming down, question 4. List 5 current learning theories that are applied to vocational education, and explain how they might be used to optimize the learning experience. Okay. List 5 current learning theories that are applicable or that you could apply to vocational education. Explain how they might be used to optimize the learning experience. Okay, so number 1 there could be behaviorist learning theory. Okay, another one could be constructivist learning theory. Okay, now if you go to Google and type in learning theories, you're going to come up with quite a few, and we're just looking for you to pick out 5. And you're going to put in, for example, behaviorist learning theory, and this theory can be applied by the following methods in a training session, okay? And you'll be able to research that and find that quite easily, okay? Another one is cognitive learning theory, okay? So just go ahead, go to Google and type in learning theories and look for the first top 5 there, okay? Question 5, define what is meant by the term contextualize. Okay, so contextualize means make relevant, essentially. Okay, so we're looking for you to certainly provide a good quality example and think about your industry. But the word contextualize means make relevant. Make relevant, make relevant, okay? So I guess the question to ask yourself is, how can you tailor sessions and training sessions to be even more relevant and specific to a particular audience? Okay, so have a think about that and answer that question, really. But I guess the specific ways that you can do it are certainly adjusting terminology, adjusting the questions, adjusting the types of case studies and scenarios that are presented. Okay, so just flush that out a little bit there with the ways that you might do it for your industry. So say, example, you work in hospitality, you could say, in our industry of hospitality, we would talk about specific coffee types, okay, and coffee machines, whatever that might be. Okay. Question 6, what is the purpose of a session plan? Okay, well, the purpose of a session plan is essentially to make sure that the information presented is consistent, it's reliable, and all trainers present the information in a similar way. It also, a session plan, great session plan will list the resources required, the timings, and what also needs to be prepared for the session, who's delivering it, all that kind of information. Okay. Question 7, what constitutes training materials? Okay. Well, anything that would lead to supporting a learning experience. So handouts, posters, checklists, PowerPoints, flip charts, anything that really relates to the training, content could really be a training material. All right, coming down. Question 8, define verbal and non-verbal communications. Okay, so probably the best thing to do is go to Google and type in verbal and non-verbal communication, or type in monitoring learners, okay, or type in non-verbal communication, okay, and see what comes up, okay. You'd also type in body language, okay, but ultimately verbal and non-verbal communication is the responses that we get back or that we notice from the listener, okay. So if it was verbal, then we could say that's the words, the tonality, the inflection, okay, the sentence structure, okay, and we can say that looking at all those different things as a communicator, when we notice those things, we put together meaning, okay, and we base that on assumptions or presumed knowledge of what the context might be and of what the situation might be, and our knowledge of the person, okay. Non-verbal communication. Okay, well that relates to anything other than the words. So this could be the tonality, the posture, the physical movements of the body, the micro expressions, the profile type, okay, the gestures that somebody may use, the enunciation, the inflection, okay. So all of those things that would be paralinguistic, i.e. not related to the words, okay. So that's essentially a great definition there for you. All right, question 9. What can a trainer facilitator gain by monitoring learner verbal, non-verbal communication? Well, obviously, they can gain an insight, understanding, and awareness as to how the information is being received by the learner, how much is being taken in, if it was being presented in a manner that the learner could take in. They could also gain a self-awareness as to how their communication is going, and they could gain some awareness around their profile type and personality, okay? Because the success of your communication comes back to the response that you get. So monitoring a learner is going to tell you how successful you are as a communicator. Okay, and ultimately your training sessions are either great or terrible based on how effectively your learners are perceiving and receiving the information that you present to them. Okay, so the answer to the question is you can gain self-awareness around how effective you are as a communicator. Okay, and then from that, obviously, you can also gain an awareness as to how successfully the information is landing and also the progress of your students. Okay. Question 10. What source of WHS information could you access to determine any hazards in a training environment? Well, you could access hazard reports if your company does them. You could access, evacuation plans. Okay, you could access the room and look at it yourself. Okay, you could look at the equipment to see that it's tested and tagged. Okay, question 11. Okay, list the legislation, regulations, and codes and procedures that may be applicable to any trainer and facilitator delivering group sessions. Okay, well, funnily enough, we've already listed 2 of them for you. So we could say WHS and whatever the year of the document is for your state. Okay, so New South Wales, Tasmania, Western Australia, Queensland, all of that. We could have anti-discrimination for sure, put in the year that came out. What else? Privacy and confidentiality. And there would be a number of other pieces of legislation that would apply to trainers. Okay, duty of care would be another one. Okay, have a think about your industry and what would be required for there. Okay, question 12. Provide one example of culturally sensitive communication. Okay, easiest way to answer this question would be, what should you never do if you are teaching people from a different culture? Okay, so in here you could say, if I was teaching Aboriginal people, I would make sure that I was not too direct with my eye contact. If I was teaching Asian students, I would make sure that I didn't make them feel awkward. If they didn't know the answer, I wouldn't single people out. If I was dealing with Muslims and Arabs, I would make sure that I was very careful about putting males and females together in role plays and things like that. Okay, so just think about any particular cultures and think about how could you be sensitive to that culture. All right. Coming down. Question 13. What constitutes unacceptable behavior in the learning environment? Okay. Well, you can come up with numerous examples for this one, and basically anything that would, how do we put this, hinder the learning process would be unacceptable behavior. Okay, so anything that would be detrimental, would slow the learning down, or would be an infringement on somebody else's rights, would certainly be unacceptable behavior in the learning environment. Okay. Some specific examples could be swearing. It could be what else? Unacceptable behavior. It could be not turning up to class on time. Those kind of things. All right. Question 14. What are the different types of questions you could ask during class to gauge the progress of a learner's learning? Okay, so you could say open questions, closed questions, check-in questions. Okay, let's see, rhetorical questions. Okay, just having some fun with that one. All right, factual questions. Okay, those are the kinds of things that we're looking for there. All right, and probably you want to provide an example. Okay, so if we wanted to provide an example, we could say, are there any particular areas that you are struggling in? Okay, what area is getting easier for you? Does what we just covered make sense? Okay, so those would be some specific examples that you could provide. All right, question 15. List 3 training records that RTOs must keep. Okay, so this could be obviously enrollment forms. It could be copies of qualifications that have been issued. It could be what else? Resumes. It could be position descriptions. It could be learning program plans. It could be training assessment strategies. All those different kinds of things. Okay. Question 16. Explain how you would use the diversity of your group as a resource to support and enrich the learning process. Okay. Now, obviously, when we get a training room together and a training group together, we are going to have all different types of people. And, we can't ever expect every single student to be exactly the same. And by actually using those differences to our advantage, we're going to end up with a much better training experience for everyone. So, how do we use the diversity? Well, we get them to share examples from their own life. We get open communication. We have brainstorming sessions. We pair people up from different walks of life, and that's going to enrich the examples that are brought out in the training session. Okay. Obviously, we want to acknowledge everybody. We want to make them feel good, and we want to certainly hear their experiences and use that as a basis for our training content. Okay. But to even ask the question is a little bit strange, because in every training session, you're going to have so much diversity. Even in the same workplace, you're going to have diversity of personalities, diversity of backgrounds, diversity of racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, linguistic backgrounds. Okay, so just accept that everyone's going to be different. Okay, you're going to have visual people, auditory people, kinesthetic people. Okay, it's just a given. Okay, so we need to remember to factor in balancing all of those learner types. Okay. Question 17. Name and explain the 4 standard steps in effective risk management. Okay. So this is looking at if you walked into a room and you saw that there was a significant hazard that was going to cause a risk, what would you do with it? How would you handle it? So probably the first thing that you do is you'd identify it. Second is that you would look to remove it. Next, if you couldn't remove it, you would minimize the risk by using engineering, or you would you recommend PPE. And number 4, you would make sure that you report it on a hazard form, and you would report it to your manager, and you would inform other people about it, and you would probably do an induction on it as well. Okay. Question 18. Explain hierarchy of control and make note of PPE and WHS policies. Okay, so essentially what I recommend you do is go to Google and type in hierarchy of control. Okay, and see what comes up. What I recommend that you do is actually draw in here the pyramid of the hierarchy of control. Okay, and Naturally, if you can provide an example of how you would use the hierarchy of control, that's going to bring some depth to your answer. Okay. Question 19. What effects, positive and negative, can work-based learning training have in the workplace? Okay. So, number one could be it will motivate people. They'll get excited. Fantastic. We'll teach them some new skills and they'll know some more things, right? Also, it will build loyalty. Okay. People will want to stick around longer. All right. Now, on the negative side of things, maybe people develop brand new skills and don't want to be around any longer, okay? So that's something to keep in mind as well. Another one could be it will affect productivity because the training will need to be done during work time probably, and so people will need to be away from their jobs, and that'll impact output for sure. Okay. Another one could be you may have disgruntled workers that don't want to be in the training for some reason at all. Okay. All right. So I think that's covered the question for you. But another one could be that other people will be impacted. What I mean by that is colleagues will be having to take on the burden of extra work, or if it was in an environment where practical tasks need to be done, then areas will need to be segmented off, and work within the training session could impact others. So, for example, if you're running a simulation, then that simulation could impact other people in the workplace. Okay. Question 20. List 4 of the most common adult learner styles. Okay, so without telling you how to boil an egg, we've got visual, auditory, kinesthetic, read, write. Okay, so if you want to go to Google and type in visual learner styles, okay, see what comes up. All right, and just describe that in a little bit of detail. Auditory, describe that in a bit of detail. Kinesthetic, describe it, and read, write, describe it in a bit of detail. Okay, cool. What WHS legislation and regulation covers workplaces in your state? Okay, so just type in Queensland, WHS legislation, question mark. Okay, New South Wales, WHS legislation, question mark. See what comes up, all right? And just write that in there. But obviously we want full sentences on that. So the legislation that covers my state is blah, blah, blah. Okay. Question 22. What are 3 fundamental principles of learning that must be in place for successful learning to take place? Okay. So you may want to go to Google and type in learning principles. Okay, or principles of learning, and just list 3 of them. Okay, so one of them could be learners feel part of the learning process. Okay, or it could be excuse me, learners feel like there is a relevance to the learning content. Okay, question 23. What are the 7 principles of effective communication, and how would you ensure that you utilize them within your training session? All right, so the easiest way to handle this question is go to Google and type in the 7 C's of communication. Okay, 7 C's of communication. See what comes up. If you actually go to a website, businessballs.com, you will find it there as well. Okay, but you will probably discover that one of them is clarity, another one is conciseness, and you will find them on Google quite easily. All right. Question 24. List 6 common presentation aids or materials that you would use to support your presentations. Okay, so these could be things like flip charts, PowerPoints, okay, posters, handouts, all those different kinds of things, all right? And you could just have a think about any props that you may use from your industry that could help you in your presentations, okay? Question 25. What are 3 ways that you could gather information about your learners before you commenced your instructions with them? Okay. So, this could be things like Pre-course interviews, actually phoning your students and having interviews with them. Another one could be sending them emails. Another one could be looking through their resume. Another one could be looking through their enrollment form in detail. Okay. Another one could be getting them to do a self-evaluation before they come along to the course. Okay. So there's a couple there. Okay. Question 26. So, in relation to your specific training venue and organisation, how would you ensure that you had access to the required equipment prior to your training? Okay, so this could be as simple as speaking to admin and making sure you have a key to enter the venue. It could be doing a test and a check on the equipment, maybe a day or 2 days before you need to use the equipment. It could be pre-ordering materials within a week's time and making sure that everything was ready. Okay, so those kind of things are really going to help you make sure that the required equipment is ready. Okay, and you've got access to it. Okay, question 27. What would be the best procedure to notify participants of the training, and how early would you need to do that in your organisation? So let's imagine that in your organisation, you've got to run a training session, and let's see, you've got a week to do it, so you've got a week to prepare for it. How are you going to tell people that it's going to happen? How are you going to let people know about it? Okay, so probably you're going to put up a notice somewhere. Probably you're going to send out an email. Probably you're going to inform the participants verbally as well and tell them what to bring. Okay, but have a think about in your organisation, if you're putting on a training session, how would you let people know about it? Okay, so don't overcomplicate the question too much. Question 28. When would you apply coaching techniques to learning with a learner? Okay, so coaching techniques obviously are things that we would look at and would be more based around asking great quality questions to our learner so that they have new thoughts and new approaches to how they do things in life. So a time that we would typically apply coaching techniques could be whenever a student is struggling. Also, when a student is not learning to the best of their ability and they're expecting other people to do all the work for them. Another one could be when they are interrupting others and making it harder for others to learn. Okay. Maybe another one could be that a learner is being reluctant to learn. All those different kinds of things. Okay. And now, next one, question 29. When would you provide feedback to your learners on their performance, and how would you ensure that it was received in a positive manner? Okay, so this would be pretty much related to assessment feedback, but it also could be feedback on performance in a training session. Okay, so you may want to do this one-on-one when no one else is around, okay? But when it actually is done in a group setting, it can be equally as powerful, but we need to be very careful about not embarrassing anyone, okay? So how would you ensure that it was received in a positive manner? Well, my feeling is that you need to make sure that it's presented in a way that's very beneficial to the learner. So, for example, in the last task that you did X, Y, Z really well, but what we want to do is create a better result in your ability to blah, and a way to do that would be this, okay? Would it be okay if next time around you really focused on doing more of that, and by doing so, you're going to get a great result, okay? So in order to make sure that they receive it in a positive manner, we simply need to present it in a way that's very beneficial to them. We need to really exacerbate the positive, because nobody likes to be told where they can improve or where they are falling short. People like to be told how they can enhance their performance, not improve it. Okay. Question 30. How would you ensure that the learner is picking up the new skills that you are instructing? What signs would you look for? Okay. So probably you're going to be looking for the signs that the learner is able to do the task, and maybe they make a few mistakes, but they keep going. Maybe they are slowly developing the skills to be able to do it on their own, and maybe they're even showing other people how to do it. And maybe they are making less mistakes, they're getting less complaints, and the task is getting easier for them. Okay, those kind of things. Okay, let's come down. Question 31. If you notice resistance in the learning process, what are 2 measures that you would use to suit the learner's needs? Okay. So number 1 could be reflecting on, are you teaching in the student's learning style? Because we've got visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Okay, so you definitely want to notice that. Okay, another one could be, are you teaching in the student's personality type, i.e. the PART model, so pragmatist, activist, reflective, theorist. Another one could be to sit down and have a coaching session with them and say, what specifically are you finding is the biggest roadblock or challenge to taking on this information? Or what would be your ideal outcome that you would love to achieve by completing this course? Okay, so really getting to some great specifics and also painting out a vision for the learner going forward. Okay, question 32. Describe a situation when a learner has specific preferences and needs within the training environment and how you catered for them. Okay, so just think about an example of when you've had a student that was a little bit unique, and how did you cater for them? So maybe you had a student that had reading and writing challenges. Well, what did you do for them? Okay, maybe you had a learner that was deaf. What did you do for them? Okay, maybe you had a learner that was unable to come to class regularly. What did you do for them? Okay, so let's think about a specific example. Question 33. In your industry, where would learners and you source relevant learning material? Okay. Now, we've got websites, journals, intranet, etc. here. Okay. But we're actually looking for specific examples. All right. So just in your answer for question 33, just write, in my industry of hospitality, people would be able to find information at the following websites. Blah, okay, and just list 2 or 3 there. Okay, question 34. What are 3 major roles or personnel that most apply to safety in your workplace or a workplace that you are familiar of, okay, or know of? Okay, number 1 could be the fire warden. Okay, another one could be let's see, the WHS officer. Another one could be what else? What else? Don't even know, okay? But just think about some safety roles in your organization, because everyone's organization is slightly different, okay? You may have someone that fulfills all of the roles. You may have someone that is in charge of evacuating people, okay? You may have someone that's involved in testing and tagging equipment, okay? Or you could just have the HR manager, you could have fire wardens and HSR reps, okay? So question 35, what are the responsibilities of the learners in relation to safety in the learning environment, okay? So you could say they're responsible for not putting themselves in danger, showing duty of care to others, what else? They're responsible for using the equipment safely. They're responsible for what else? Not drinking alcohol, not taking drugs, and also maybe reporting any other hazards to the trainer and letting the trainer know about it, letting the trainer know that there is any perceived risk in the environment. those kind of things, okay? Question 36, if a piece of equipment is faulty in your organization, what is the procedure that must be followed? Okay, this question is pretty self-explanatory, but just think about your own organization. Maybe you got a photocopier that's broken. Maybe you have a forklift that's broken. What are you going to do about it? How are you going to report that? Okay. Question 37. Now, please put your answers into a sentence and create 2 or 3 sentences on it. Question 37. What training records need to be kept in an organization and how should they be stored? Okay, so this could be things like enrollment records, assessment feedback. It could be what else? USI documents, EVETMIS data. We could have ASQA audit reports. We could have, let's see, student resumes. We could have training assessment strategies, and they should be stored in a filing cabinet which is locked and is fireproof, flood-proof, all those different things. Okay. Question 38. What are 3 learning resources, textbooks, that could be used as reference materials for your course that you are currently teaching, that you currently teach, or could teach in the future? Okay. So go ahead and think about 3 books or textbooks that you could use in order to teach that material. So what we're trying to ascertain here is that you are able to access resources, know about them, and it could be particular textbooks that you know about, or it could be course materials that maybe a company like Aspire may sell. All right, or it could be specific websites. So we've got reference materials as well. So you could list out your in-house training materials, but be specific when you say that. All right. So that should be a pretty self-explanatory question there. Question 38. Okay. So this section, all you need to do is just sign it as a learner and pop the date. Okay. And the rest is filled out by your assessor, okay? And that, folks, is the end of the short answer questions for this webinar, okay? So if you have any further questions about the webinar, please give the office a call and they'll be able to help you out with it, okay? But that's the short answer questions. I'm going to stop the webinar in a moment, and there will be another webinar that will handle the projects for this particular booklet, okay? So thank you for watching this webinar. We wish you the best of luck in answering the questions. If you have any problems at all, please reach out. All right, bye for now.